Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently the eve of November 27, 2023 in the United States, the morning of November 28, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the truce between Israel-Hamas and the hostage exchange. Today is the last day of the initial deal between Israel and Hamas. It was going to be 4 days of a truce and hostage exchanges each day. In the initial hours of the day, the list that Hamas had transferred to Israel of the hostages that were going to be released was rejected by Israel. The list included 9 children and 2 older women, but not the children's mothers. Israel rejected this. The Mossad threatened to blow up the deal. Hamas also expressed discontent with the list of Palestinian prisoners that was going to be released, stating that Israel is violating the deal and is not releasing prisoners according to the extent of time that they were in jail. Eventually, President Biden also intervened, spoke with Qatar and Egypt intervened, both lists were adjusted, and the hostage exchange went through. The total of 11 Israelis who were released include a 12-year-old boy, a brother and sister who are 16 and 12, 2 brothers who are 17 and 13. The 13-year-old was shown in a video of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad several weeks ago as one of the hostages that was taken, a mother and 3-year-old girls who are twins, a mother and 2 daughters who are 18 and 11. The 11-year-old was brought out in a wheelchair. She was not injured prior to October 7th. It is presumed that she was injured in the attack on October 7th. 3 of those who were released have French citizenship. All of their fathers, 5 fathers in total, remain behind in captivity. A total of 33 Palestinians were released from Israeli jails. These include 3 Palestinian women, some of whom had planned substantial terror attacks, but they didn't manage to carry them out, and 30 younger boys under the age of 19, most of whom were arrested for stone throwing in the past year. In addition, Egypt announced during the day that Thai citizens would be released from Hamas captivity as well. However, in the end, no Thai citizens were released. Relating to additional details that the hostages that have been released are reporting from their conditions in captivity. First, it is reported by some hostages that a day after they were taken into captivity, when they were being hidden in the tunnels, they met Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip and the chief architect of the October 7th attack. According to their report, he came to visit them in one of the tunnels, asked their names, reassured them that nothing's going to happen to them, that they're going to be released in a hostage exchange, and stated, quoting, "This is the safest place you can be." A couple of things that we can take from this. First, this reconfirms reports about Yahya Sinwar that he himself has a personal interest in the operation and a personal interest in Israelis. He's fascinated by Israeli society. It is also reported that he speaks flawless Hebrew. More importantly, however, the hostages that were released in the first 3 days all came from down south in the Gaza Strip. Different intelligence reports are suggesting that Yahya Sinwar and the entire leadership of Hamas is actually hiding down south. If these reports are true, connecting these with the intelligence reports, it indicates that already from the first day of the war, Yahya Sinwar and possibly Muhammad Def were all already hiding in the Han Yunis area down south. In addition, reports from their conditions in captivity of some of the different hostages that were freed, they said that largely families were kept together, locked in different rooms, and the reports varied regarding the actual humanitarian conditions and the food they were given. Some reported that they were fed quite well. Some reported that food became very scarce. According to the different hospital reports, a lot of the people who were released, specifically the elderly, are quite malnourished, and they have each lost between 8 and 15 kilos of their weight. In other news relating to the hostages, the Thai foreign minister is due to arrive in Israel tomorrow and is going to meet with the released Thai hostages. In addition, a story is coming out from the aunt of Roni Kriboy, who is the Israeli-Russian citizen that was released from captivity. According to her, what he went through in captivity is that he was held in a building that had collapsed as a result of the bombings. He then managed to actually escape from his captors, and for 4 days was trying to make his way towards the IDF, but he had no idea which direction he was going or what he was doing, and eventually he was caught again and handed back to Hamas. A total of roughly 167 hostages now remain in captivity. However, that number is roughly because the Thai government is stating that possibly there are more hostages that they didn't know about. Israel is also saying that they may not have accounted for all the hostages, so that is an estimate right now. Relating to the future development of the truce, like I said, this was supposed to be the last day of the truce. However, in the initial deal, there was another clause added that stated that Hamas can buy itself, quote unquote, another day of a truce if it releases upwards of 10 hostages that meet the criteria. The criteria that was agreed upon is women and children. Hamas can buy itself another day of a truce if it releases upwards of 10 hostages that meet the criteria per day, and Hamas was supposed to use these 4 days in order to talk to other organizations that are holding on to different hostages, do a tally of the hostages it has, and see if it can gather enough hostages to meet the criteria. Throughout the day, Al Arabi al-Jadid reported that Hamas is stating that it has evidence from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad that they have enough hostages and meet the criteria to ask for another 4 days of a truce. However, Hamas was demanding the truce be expanded to the West Bank and East Jerusalem as well. Eventually, the truce has been officially extended, not including the West Bank and East Jerusalem, only for the Gaza Strip, according to the initial terms, by only 2 more days. This means that there is assurances that 20 more Israeli hostages are going to be released, and in turn, 60 Palestinian prisoners are going to be released as well. Hamas has transferred the list of the 10 people who are due to be released tomorrow to Israel, and Israel is currently reviewing that list. Throughout the day, it was reported the Palestinian Islamic Jihad has handed over its hostages to Hamas for Hamas to negotiate in their name. In addition, the Israeli government also expanded the list of Palestinians that it is pre-approving for release. So initially, the Israeli government had pre-approved 300 Palestinians to be released in any deal. So far, 150 have been released. They added another 50 names to that list in anticipation of possible future developments. In addition, in accordance with the initial deal, the aid trucks and humanitarian aid and fuel and natural gas is going to continue to flow into the Gaza Strip every day that the truce is extended. Regarding some information about some of the hostages that have been identified and some of the Palestinian prisoners, the Bivas family, which has become famous because their 10-month-old babies, the youngest one who has been kidnapped, along with his 4-year-old brother and the 2 parents, have not been released in the truce thus far. According to the IDF, despite the fact that they were kidnapped by Hamas, they were handed over by the organization to a different group in Khan Yunis, likely the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and thus they have not been released in the current negotiations, and hopefully they will be released in the coming days. In addition, among the Palestinian prisoners that have now been added to the list is Ahed Tamimi. She's a 22-year-old woman who was arrested this month for inciting posts on Instagram. However, she is somewhat of a Palestinian folk hero, and she has a long list, a long history of confronting the IDF since she was a little girl. There are videos of her standing in the way of IDF soldiers, slapping IDF soldiers as a teenager, and she has currently been arrested in the last month. She is also on the list of those who might be released. In addition, relating to further expansions of the deal, one of Hamas's senior leaders, Khalil al-Haya, today stated that he hopes that the next stage of the deal, which will involve releasing hostages that are not women and children, i.e. the men that have been left behind, will commence immediately after the current phase of the truce. So this gives us a glimpse of how Hamas is trying to stage this, that as far as they're concerned, once this truce is over, they're going to immediately try to lead this into another truce that will forestall the IDF's offensive longer and will secure the release of more Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the men that have been kept behind in captivity. Even further, Izzat Arshak, who is a member of Hamas's political bureau, today stated to the Qatari Al Arabi network that Hamas is prepared to begin negotiating over the kidnapped soldiers as well. Up until now, all the negotiations have only been about the Israeli civilians. The organization is prepared to start negotiating about the kidnapped IDF soldiers as well. However, that the negotiations will be separate from the debate about civilians. He added that Netanyahu himself knows that the debate will be separate and that Hamas is still in control of the situation in the north of the Gaza Strip. He also added that relating to the release of soldiers, this is going to involve massive release of Palestinian prisoners. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad has stated that no soldiers will be released unless all Palestinian prisoners are released. And Izzat Arshak also stated that it will involve a demand on part of Hamas of a permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the ongoing fighting in the Gaza Strip, the truce in the last 24 hours was maintained. No incidents were reported on either side. Relating to some of the evidence that's coming out about the fighting that happened prior to the truce, the IDF is reporting about its activity in Al-Shifa hospital. According to evidence that it found substantial weapons throughout the hospital, including guns and ammunitions, grenades, other ammunitions, and RPGs that were hidden in medical cases. It is reported that the IDF is surprised that most of the activity was actually above ground, not in the tunnels beneath Al-Shifa hospital, and stated that soldiers also knew where to go when they entered the hospital because they simply asked patients where are the areas in the hospital that are no-go zones for them regularly, and this is how the IDF knew where Hamas is located. In addition, relating to when the fighting will resume, Israeli Defense Minister Gallant today met with soldiers from the front line, and he stated, and I'm quoting, "We will return to fighting, we will utilize the same force we did before and more. Remember that while you are organizing and resting and reviewing the previous attacks, the enemy is doing the same thing. You will meet something more prepared. That is why they will first meet the Air Force bombs, then the artillery and tank shells, then the D9 shovels, and eventually the infantry's bullets. We will fight throughout the entire Gaza Strip. So again, Yoav Gallant is not only stating that the IDF is going to return in full force and also the Air Force is going to return in full force, but he's again stating that the fight is going to be throughout the entire Gaza Strip, not just the north. No new casualties are reported in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. However, the IDF did publish for the first time today the list of injuries, soldiers that have been injured in the war since the invasion. It reports that over 1,000 IDF soldiers were injured. Of these, 202 are considered badly or in critical condition. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, the UN Secretary General today stated that the truce must become a humanitarian ceasefire since the situation in the Gaza Strip is still deteriorating daily. The Palestinian Red Crescent today reported that during the previous days of the truce, 150 aid trucks managed to make their way up north. The aid trucks are coming in from Rafah in the south, but they managed to make their way up north. And today, an additional 40 trucks made their way to Gaza City itself. This is very important because part of the breakdowns on day 3 of the truce was revolved around Hamas's allegations that no trucks are making their way up north. In addition, a French military ship that is going to serve as a floating hospital arrived in El Arish in Egypt. The ship has 2 operating rooms and 60 hospital beds, and it is prepared to begin receiving Palestinian civilians who were injured in the war. There were no reports given today about the amount of aid trucks that entered, neither by Egypt, nor by Israel, nor by the UN. Reports did suggest that what the deal includes, which is the entrance of 200 humanitarian aid trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies, alongside 4 trucks of fuel and 4 trucks of natural gas and cooking gas, were approved for entry. However, no reports were made. I will add, no allegations were made that the trucks did not enter, which usually happens. When the trucks don't enter, we might assume, therefore, that the amount of trucks that were supposed to enter entered. However, no reports were actually made. Moving on to the West Bank, there was substantial IDF activity reported in Aqaba Jaber in the area near Jericho, as well as at Nablus and in Askar refugee camp. Confrontations between the IDF and Palestinians involved, according to reports, Molotov cocktails and substantial gun battles. There are reports of several Palestinians that were injured, although no fatalities have been reported thus far. A total of 20 Palestinians were arrested throughout the West Bank. 15 of them were reported to be Hamas members. Moving on to the north of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, this has been the quietest day since the war began. There were no incidents, no border incidents, no rocket fire, nothing was reported. The only thing that I will say is that the Lebanese Foreign Ministry put out a statement today echoing the previous ones of the Lebanese government, stating, and I quote, "Lebanon is not seeking a war, nor does it want one." He asked Israel to stop threatening to destroy Lebanon and that the IDF stop violating Lebanese sovereignty. So what we're seeing is that Lebanon is very concerned that after the truce is over, which again was supposed to be tomorrow, now it's been extended, there will be again escalations between Israel and Hezbollah, and the government is again putting out messages trying to say this is not in Lebanon's interest, it does not want this war. Moving on to some of the regional developments, the Pentagon today updated that the attempted hijacking of a ship yesterday off the coast of Aden was likely done by Somali pirates and not the Houthis. However, it did also state that while the USS Mason was freeing the hijacked ship, Houthi rebels fired 2 ballistic missiles at both ships. Both the missiles missed, they were not intercepted, and the ship was freed. There was no retaliation reported against the Houthis. Moving on to some of the political general trends that occurred in the last 24 hours, after I reported yesterday that there is growing disagreement between Prime Minister Netanyahu and his coalition on the one side, and the status camp led by Benny Gantz on the other side, today there was the critical government meeting in order to approve the modified budget of 2023. Members of Gantz's status camp did all vote against the budget. However, reports indicate that they are not planning to leave the government at this time, but that there is growing discontent between the status camp and the way the government is handling the war, specifically stating that they sense that Netanyahu is stopping to focus only on the war and more on his political survival. In addition, the EU foreign minister today, Joseph Borrell, tweeted in response to Israel reapproving certain parts of the budget that also allocate funds towards ministries that are in charge of settlements in the West Bank. He tweeted, and I'm quoting, "I'm appalled to learn that in the middle of the war, the Israeli government is poised to commit new funds to build more illegal settlements. This is not self-defense and will not make Israel safer. These settlements are a grave breach of international humanitarian law, and they are Israel's greatest security liability." In addition, today, French President Macron put out a statement in which he congratulated the release of hostages with French citizenship, and the German president who's visiting Israel also met with Netanyahu and also expressed horror at the events of October 7th and committed German money in order to rebuild certain areas of the affected towns and kibbutzim down south. In addition, Jordanian foreign minister today stated in a conference in Spain that what Israel did in the Gaza Strip falls under the legal definition of genocide, and he called upon Western states to limit weapons supplies to Israel. Moving on to some of the speculation regarding the future of the Gaza Strip, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is due to arrive in Israel in the coming days. According to the State Department, his mission is going to include, and I quote, emphasizing the need to maintain humanitarian aid into Gaza, ensure the hostages will be released, the need to improve protection given to Gazan civilians, and the principles of the future of the Gaza Strip, and the need to establish an independent Palestinian state. This was echoed later by Qatari Prime Minister as well, who stated that the goal of destroying Hamas in this war is unreal. It will only inflame the narrative of extremists and radicals, and that we need a political solution where we'll ensure the security of Palestinian people and Israeli people and lead to a two-state solution. Amidst these reports about international expectations, and specifically the United States, relating to the future of the Gaza Strip and establishing a Palestinian state, there is growing reports in Israel that Prime Minister Netanyahu is extremely worried about rumors that the Likud is planning to depose him. He has found the time to meet multiple backbenchers in the Likud in the last days, and he conveyed to them that he does not intend to give up on the leadership of the Likud after the war. Specifically, when meeting one group of MKs from the Likud, he asked to convey the message, and that the message be reiterated, that he is the only one that can defeat Hamas, and also the only one that can ensure that a Palestinian state is not established. So again, this tells us something about the different expectations with regards to the United States, and at least what the Israeli Prime Minister is trying to echo right now, and the disagreements regarding the future of the Gaza Strip. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.